Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most distinguished and very welcome guests. This is another educational speech. And educational speeches teach us all about various aspects of the whole Toastmasters experience. And there's a couple of dozens of these, yes. The idea is that Toastmasters give you the basic script and they provide the visuals, and the speaker takes that script and applies their own stories and anecdotes and really makes it come alive rather than just standing here and reading it out word for word. So you should see on your chair, on the floor, a summary of the slides, like this. Yeah. You should also see a checklist, a questionnaire. So I'd ask you to keep this checklist questionnaire in mind as I go through the presentation. And there's various items here. Can I ask that before the end of the meeting you fill this checklist in? If you agree with one of these items, put a tick in the box. If you disagree, put a cross in the box. If you have no opinion either way or you don't know, simply leave that particular box blank. And at the end of the meeting, I'll collect the completed sheets. You can put comments on if you want. You can write on the back if you want. You can add your name, that's entirely up to you. So I'll collect them, collate the information, and pass them on to the new committee. Very well take action. Right, this one is creating the best club climate, the club climate. It's something that affects us all, whether we're experienced members or new members, and especially the guests. And that's so important, I'll say it again. The club climate affects the guests, especially the guests. Conversely, not only are we influenced by it, we have an impact upon the club climate. So simultaneously, collectively and individually, we are affected by the club climate and we create it as well. Yeah? So I'll tell you about some of the factors that combine together to make the club climate. I mean, the title of this speech is Creating the Best Club Climate, and I differ a bit from what Toastmasters say. I think it should perhaps be creating an excellent club climate, because there's different factors involved, and what's really brilliant for one person may be causing difference in another, or absolute hatred, dislike. So it's up to the individual to look at the balance, the mix of all these factors, and make a choice based on that. For example, Lewisham. Does anybody here remember Lewisham's original venue?
Yeah,
Richard
yes.
remembered.
Yeah.
Yes, some people thought it was a really scruffy place, but I liked it. It was sort of quirky.
Yeah.
It was a sort of a local community meeting hall, and there was a sense of being part of the local community's history. So I liked it. Other people didn't. So that's an example of what some people like, what some others don't. If you look at the second slide on your summary, club climate, you'll see that there are basically two categories of features. There's the physical climate and the relational climate. The physical climate is the venue, the room, the equipment. Is the venue a pleasant one? Is it easy to get to? Is it got good transport links? When you come into the room for the first time, is the equipment set up properly? Is there a lectern? Is this our lectern, Mr. President-elect? Or are we going to get our own personal one for the new year?
We would get our personal.
Thank you very much. And we have our new banner. So that sort of thing. And the agendas and the ballot slips, they're all nicely laid out. I think attention to detail is so important. I was visiting another club a couple of months back. I went in and the chairs were nicely lined up. But on every seat, the agenda was placed in exactly the same place on every seat, every chair, and the ballot slip was aligned in exactly the same place on every agenda, and it looked really good. So somebody had obviously thought and paid attention to that. So attention to detail. The relational climate. Do people get encouragement and acknowledgement? Do they get positive and immediate feedback? Do they feel that they've got room to grow and expand and improve? All those factors to be considered. So slide 3. Set an example. What can we do to create an excellent club climate? We can arrive early. we can be prepared, we can make sure we've got our manuals and pens and pencils and things. And arriving early is very important. I was at an event recently, they said the start time is 9 o'clock, and for about 5 to 10 minutes after that, people kept coming in and interrupting. So the first 5 to 10 minutes of that event were really wasted. So that's why we say 7:15 for 7:30. So it takes the pressure off. People think, oh, I've got 15 minutes to arrive, get settled in, training times and so on, get settled in and relax, ready for the meeting. So that 15-minute window does help reassure people. Assistants, when you come in here, help set up the room if it's not set up already, yeah? Also, when we finish the meeting, help, particularly the Sergeant-at-Arms, return the room to its original state. Why is that important? Because that way we're looking after the venue, which will mean that they'll hopefully be more inclined to look after us. Calling communicators, club up the road. Until recently, we kept going to different venues, and it's so unsettling. So it's so great to have a good venue, so look after them. Volunteer for things, volunteer for committees. Happy to say our new committee is pretty well in place. So the whole thing about Toastmasters is teamwork. Be supportive, participate, even in the audience. Because the speaker on the stage is talking to and influencing the audience. It works the other way too. The audience influences and affects the speaker. I mean, how would you feel if you stood up here and people were yawning away, chatting to themselves? Do you see Fred this last night? Wasn't that good? And whoa, what about the Jubilee? They're all chatting amongst and ignoring you. You'd be affected. So be positive, active listening, positive stance. Show that you're interested in what the speaker is saying. So I can remember a couple of times when I've been quite humble, people have said to me, wow, thank you very much, Dave. If it wasn't for you, I'd have probably left Toastmasters. On one occasion particularly, I didn't say anything, I was just interested in what they were saying. I think it was their first topics, speech. So the audience does impact the speaker as well. And this is so important. As I say, it's important that the club climate positively influences the guests. And perhaps after a few meetings, or a year or two in Toastmasters, we forget how nervous we felt the first time we walked through that door. I know it took me a year of avoiding it before I first went to communicators. Putting it off and putting it, oh dear, I've missed it again, I'll better check the website to confirm what day it is. So that sort of thing went on for a year. And the first meeting I went to, the first person I spoke to ignored me. Turned their back and walked away. Maybe they were a visitor, maybe they were very close. Fortunately, the second person I talked to was Michelle. I'm sure Rihanna Peter maybe remember Michelle Campbell, Joan's daughter. Anyway, she talked to me, she took me under her wing and really looked after me for that meeting, which is why I'm here today. So, look after people. Yes. Next slide. Welcome the guests. This is another bit where I'm deviating slightly from the official line. Don't just welcome the guests, welcome everybody. As Natalie Kerr-Watson from Meridian Speakers in Greenwich said, it's really great to be greeted, even if you've been coming here for years. It's so nice to be greeted and welcomed when you walk through the door. So don't just welcome the guests, welcome everybody. And here's a suggestion, another suggestion for Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President Education-elect. Have the roles carers and greeters. In fact, if we talk to the Ian and the bar people, maybe we could reserve a small table downstairs, perhaps with a notice on it. 2 people there from 7 till 7:30. So when anybody comes through, we can say, hey, how are you doing? If we know them, if they're guests, one person can bring them up the stairs, whilst the other person stays there ready for the next guest. So we've always got 2 people downstairs to guide people up to this somewhat inconspicuous room. So that's a suggestion for the new committee to consider. And things like asking what people like best and will they return and do they want to join. I think we do that pretty well, and that's usually done by the president towards the end of the meeting. So that's good. So, if you look at slide 5, again, show new members, show everybody that you care, that we care. Because established Toastmasters, advanced speakers need all of that stuff too, all the acknowledgement and the welcoming and so on. So, I say again, we are, I think, very, very good at that. However, no room for complacency. So I think we do need to keep reminding ourselves of the importance of all of that sort of thing. Because am I perfect at that? No, I'm not, no way. So do keep reminding ourselves how important it is to make a positive impact on everybody and our guests, because we don't just represent Pearly speakers, we represent Toastmasters International. So we want everybody walking out that door thinking, wow, what a great event that was, and telling their family and friends about it. So it says earlier on, I said earlier on, don't necessarily read everything out word for word, but this last bit I will read out word for word. The conclusion is, when you enjoy each other's similarities, when you respect each other's differences and work together as a team, the club will continue to thrive. So a quick reminder about the checklists. If in the break before the end of the meeting, if you could look at the checklists, tick if you agree with it, cross if you disagree, leave it blank otherwise, plenty of room for comments, and I'll collect them and collate the results, pass them on to you. Thank you very much.